welcome to another episode of Van City Health. Today we have two guests who've come to start up Orion RLT, which stands for Red Light Therapy. First we have Clarence, who graduated from UBC with a Bachelor's of Kinesiology, has a diploma in Sports Science from Douglas College, and graduated with a diploma in General Business Studies from Qualman. He's a certified personal trainer through the American College of Sports Medicine and a certified strength and conditioning specialist through the National Strength and Conditioning Association, NSCA, as we'll say from now on. And he was a former first aid instructor for UBC, former intern strength and conditioning coach at UBC's Varsity Weight Room and the Better Bodies Club. And right now he's working as an S&C coach at Saltus Athletic Academy and at the Richmond Olympic Oval. I also wanted to highlight how he's the regional S&C coach for the Canadian wheelchair rugby team, which I found was super cool when I read that. And we also have Matt. He's also a UBC graduate with a Bachelor's of Kinesiology and a certified strength and conditioning specialist through the NSCA, and a functional range conditioning mobility specialist and a kinesiologist. During his time at UBC, he volunteered at Kids Physio Group, was an event planner for the BC Powerlifting Association, event coordinator for the Kinesiology Undergraduate Society, or the KUS, a student coach at the UBC Varsity Weight Room, coach at Jump Gymnastics, and an S&C intern coach at the Richmond Olympic Oval. And right now he's a kinesiologist and S&C coach at Innovative Fitness. He's also an avid photographer, so he's available as a freelancer, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Great, that's your plug. Great, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Great.
Yeah.
So, starting with Clarence. Aside from Orion RLT, are you looking to stay full-time as an S&C coach?
Man, I don't know. Honestly, yeah. I want to say yes for now, but that could very well change.
Sure.
Depending on how Orion goes, depending on what opportunities come my way. So I'm gonna say yes for now, but it'll depend on. I'm gonna play the cards as they're given to me. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Honestly, a lot of people starting up anything will end up keeping their full-time career until they get some more traction on that side project, side hustle.
For sure.
And then I'm sure you've heard a lot of success stories of it's gonna quit my day job, gonna go full-time, then it just blows up. And I think one of the biggest takeaways from books that I read called Drive by Daniel Pink is, once you have those three things working for you, autonomy, purpose, and mastery, all in one place, that's when you're really driven to do your best work. And it seems like your purpose is really at Orion RLT, at least for now. So it'll be cool to see how that goes.
For sure.
All right, Matt, same goes to you. Even though you're working at Orion, you're still an S&C coach. Are you still interested in going into the physio route?
Physio has been in the back of my mind for a long time, ever since studying at UBC. Yeah. In the past few years, since working at Innovative Fitness as a kinesiologist, working with injured clients, I've still had a lot of interest in physio. But to be completely honest, I haven't gone to school this year, so I applied this year. Recently heard back, didn't make it in. So now I'm exploring other options because I do still have a passion for the rehabilitation side. Right. So currently I'm looking into osteopathy. Okay. So that's probably something that's not very well known in Vancouver. It's something that I kind of came across a few years ago with someone, a recent alumni. He helped me with my lower back injury. Yep. So I've suffered some of those. And so I was kind of just open-minded at the time, and that's how I found out about osteopathy.
Really cool. What is osteopathy?
It's still something I'm trying to figure out, but from my understanding, it's a more holistic approach to therapy, whereas physical therapy is more about typically it's about more muscular and how you move. Chiro traditionally is how, the spine is related to your movement, and so osteopathy is just a little bit different. They kind of look more, I guess, like the cranial side, the visceral side of things. So that would be like traditionally the difference. Yep. But based off what I've been learning from talking to a lot of different therapists, a good therapist at the end of the day is someone who combines those different elements, not sticking to one and just being able to have people skills.
Sure. Great. And Clarence, how was the sports science program at Douglas?
Oh, it was good. Yeah. It was great. That's where, Matt and I didn't actually meet at Douglas, but we graduated from the same program and we transferred to UBC at the same time, but we didn't actually know each other then. But no, Douglas is awesome, man. And I think the biggest thing, were the class sizes, right? The smaller class sizes. Anywhere from like 20 to 30,
Gotcha. So
40 max.
You actually know your professors.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, not just professors, but a lot of small group work and whatnot. So that was really cool. And transitioning to UBC, it was like a big change, right? Going from a class of 30 to a class of 100 plus, right? So that was really big.
Really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Could you say there's any experience you got from Douglas that has helped you in your career today?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like most directly, Douglas got me to UBC, and then I got my degree, and then so I used that degree to help me get a few jobs today, right? So that's the most, I would say, direct way. But I think at Douglas, some of the basic skills were, teamwork, communication, things like that, things that would help with any career, really, right?
So now we're going to transition to your guys' time at UBC. So Matt, going back to your time as an undergrad, how did you become an event planner with the BC Powerlifting Association?
I would have to provide some background information. So back in 2014, I started competing in powerlifting, did it competitively and made it to provincials, qualified for nationals, but just at the time didn't feel right for me to go. So moving forward from that, I kind of wanted to just give back and get involved with the more behind the scenes side, understanding how meets actually run. So that's how I got involved with being an event planner. And so we organized weekly meetings and we came together to plan for a Commonwealth Games. So be tons and tons of high-level athletes, high-level powerlifters from Canada, United Kingdom, like all the Commonwealth nations. Yeah. So that was, in and of itself, was just interesting. I personally found myself more so kind of watching and observing the meetings because I was kind of just this new person in the scene, in the room, just trying to understand there's all these sponsorships, all this money side. I think where I was most involved was like the logistics sides of it. But that was how I got involved.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Great. And how was your experience with the KUS?
It was good. Okay. It was really good. I really enjoyed that. There were tons and tons of opportunities within kinesiology at UBC. So yeah, I took on many roles within the KUS, videographer, photographer.
What do you think your biggest takeaway was?
I'd say biggest takeaway was being kind of a manager because I was an event coordinator managing a team. And so understanding how to essentially deal with people and how to interact with people and meet deadlines or keeping others accountable. Those would be the biggest takeaways.
And do you think your network that you gained out of the KUS is still present and valuable today?
I think so.
Great. Gotcha. So, Clarence, I'll throw it back to you in your time at UBC. How did you get your position at the UBC Varsity Weight Room?
I was talking to a few buddies, right? And they mentioned that they were volunteering or interning at the UBC weight room. And something that kind of, appealed to me right away. So I did a little bit of research, asked around. I was like, okay, how do I be a part of this? So, and then essentially one day I just walked into the weight room, with my resume and cover letter.
No way, really?
And I just think
like physical copy.
Yeah. I think that goes a long way, man. Okay. I wanted the coaches there to put a face to my name, right? Rather than just email, right? I think I have a much higher success rate if I walk in physically, right? And I think that will set me apart from others. So I met with Lisa, who was the assistant strength and conditioning coach at the time. Okay. We had a bit of an informal interview, and then we went from there. I started shadowing, interning for that one semester, and it was awesome.
What team did you work with?
I worked with a bit of the rugby team, baseball, swim team, golf, track and field. Yeah. So pretty much, I would just go in there during certain hours, and whatever teams that were there, I would help them out, shadow, things like that.
What do you think your biggest takeaway was working there?
Before that, I was trained like a meathead, like typical bodybuilder. You know what I mean?
A lot of bench.
Exactly. Yeah. So before, and so the biggest takeaway was really kind of understanding, strength and what strength and conditioning really is, right? Yeah. So I would say that was.
So what is strength and conditioning?
Oh man, I don't know if I could put that in a sentence, but from an S&C coach standpoint, my job is to try and improve athletic performance while decreasing the chances of injury.
Great.
Through strength and conditioning training.
Perfect.
Yeah, so that's kind of like what I would say is S&C, and that's kind of like my role as a coach.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And Matt, do you think that's everything what he said kind of was similar for you?
About strength and conditioning?
Strength and conditioning, yeah.
More or less, yes.
Okay, gotcha. Did you also walk into the weight room with...
I honestly don't remember if I did it that way. I feel like I probably went for the standard email.
Gotcha.
And then I also got like an informal
Cool.
interview with Lisa.
Gotcha. Great. And then you also volunteered for Kids Physio Group. So what did you do there?
That kind of ties in with the role as a gymnastics coach with Jump Gymnastics, because they were in the same building. They're like partnered together. So how I got involved was basically just talking, casual conversations with all the physiotherapists in that organization. And because naturally I was in kin, I thought, maybe this would be a good opportunity to just shadow and see what it's like as a physio. So that's how I got into their doors, and they were very, very open-minded about it. So that was very...
Gotcha. What were the age of the groups that you're working with?
For Kids Physio Group, they're pediatric. So they range from babies, I don't know how young. Yeah. Maybe 6 months, maybe earlier. Gotcha. I don't think earlier though. Yeah. 6 months all the way up to 18, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Like 18 years old.
18 years old.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Really cool. And what do you think was your biggest takeaway as a student working at Kids Physio Group, being that S&C intern and coaching at Jump?
I'd say at the time, so with S&C, interning S&C at UBC, at the time, like Clarence, I was training like a meathead, like powerlifting. Yeah. So I was not very exposed to different styles of training. So really my takeaway from S&C at the time was understanding that there's more than just one style of training, more than just powerlifting. There's conditioning, there's all this different aspect to athleticism. Right. So that was my biggest takeaway from S&C. In terms of working at Jump Gymnastics, my biggest takeaway was understanding how to communicate with athletes and understanding how to manage team dynamics. Okay. So at Jump, their age group was 6 months to 8 years. And if you can sort of imagine, sometimes you get different types of personalities. And so understanding how to sometimes assert yourself as an authority, sometimes being able to connect with them, that's part of the role as a coach there. And then also being able to somehow meet, parents' expectations and not make them feel like their kid's not developing well, or giving them reassurance. And then shadowing with Kids Physio is seeing that. I think my biggest takeaway with them over there is realizing that there's more than what I thought a physio would do. And like you, it's like watching physios work with babies was very eye-opening for me. A lot of it was about just having fun, making it fun for them. But then like sprinkling in, little actual physio work or homework. So that has been super cool.
You have to be really creative on how you were able to help, such a young age demographic. But, it definitely seems like a lot of different experiences brought you knowledge of like what you like and don't like, I'm assuming, out of all of those different fields, which is pretty cool. And Clarence, so how did you find yourself working as an S&C coach at Better Bodies Club?
Very different from UBC. Yeah. More so because it was a one-on-one or private training. Yeah. Whereas at UBC it was more group or team training. Right. Not saying that one is better than the other. I really think that they actually complement each other, right? I was working more with the general population at Better Bodies. Yeah, no, amazing experience. I was there for about 2 years. I had some great mentors there, still connect with them to this day. Gotcha. Yeah, I didn't really know what I wanted to do after I graduated. I didn't know whether I wanted to commit to, physio or something in the healthcare industry, or whether I wanted to be an S&C coach full time. But I knew I had to get experience. And I knew that I liked training. Right. I knew that I was okay at lifting weights, and I wanted to work with people. So I ended up applying to a bunch of gyms in Vancouver, and it wasn't so much about the pay for me. right? But it was more about the environment.
Right.
So I wanted to surround myself around good people, essentially. I wanted to learn from, the best trainers, and Better Bodies really fulfilled that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And what experience there helped you get to your position at Saltus Athletic Academy and the Richmond Oval?
So the Richmond Oval came first. It was really through connections,
Gotcha.
a lot of connections. So I met Coach Alex Jack at Better Bodies, and he mentioned that he was a strength coach at the Oval. And again, I miss that team aspect.
Yeah.
I really miss that environment and that kind of atmosphere. That's similar to the UBC. So then I asked Alex, I was like, hey man, can you connect me with the head coach, Matt Fisher, amazing guy at the Oval. And he sent an email. Again, I didn't really hear back. And then so similar to UBC, I went in person to the Oval. Yeah, man, dude. And I have a bit of a track record doing it. I did this when I was a lifeguard too, right, to get a job.
Amazing.
So I printed out my resume, cover letter, got dressed up, and I just did this by chance too, right? I didn't know whether Matt Fisher was going to be there, right? So I just went to the Oval hoping that he would be there. Yeah. So I went to the Oval. Went to the high performance center. It was locked. No one was in there. I was like, oh man. So then I went to the front desk and I asked, I was like, is Matt Fisher here? And then the person there was like, do you have an appointment with him? And I'm like, no, maybe. I told him, I just went straight out, like, I'm looking for an internship or volunteer experience. And so the guy at the front desk tried to call Matt. Yeah. Matt didn't pick up. So I was like, oh man, I drove all the way out here. I took the day off to try. And then I almost went home, right? I almost went back to the parking lot to my car. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to walk to the high performance center one more time, check it out. He was in there. Amazing. He was in there and he took the time out of his day and we had an informal interview and I ended up shadowing there for the summer. Cool. And was offered an interview at the end of the summer and it's been awesome working there. Yeah.
Sometimes if you really want something, you just have to go out there and take it.
For sure, man. And I've always kind of had that mentality, right? Yeah, I don't really wait for things to happen, but I try to make it happen myself.
I so rarely hear stories like that.
Really?
Not only just happening, but also working. It's just fantastic. And for everyone listening to this, like as a student, that's like the mentality that you have to have if you really want to pursue a certain field or a certain position.
Absolutely.
Or really anything.
Absolutely.
How do you become an NCSA certified strength and conditioning specialist?
So the steps to going to be a strength conditioning specialist with the NSCA is first going to their website and understanding what it entails. What does that certification entail? And then the process would be purchasing their textbook and then reading, cover to end.
Right. How big is that textbook?
It's a pretty thick textbook. Like
I'll tell you something funny after.
I'd say like for tips when you're trying to write the CSCS is to first book the test date. So you can book within 3 months in advance. And that way you kind of have this deadline to meet and then, you kind of have something light up behind you to get going. So it's very self-motivated, self-study. And then there's lots of different tools out there to help you. So that's basically how I did it.
If I may add to that, you need a degree to qualify for the CSCS.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so not anyone can just book an exam. You need to have or be in the process of graduating. So you can actually book your exam before you've graduated, but given you provide them proof of your diploma afterwards in order to receive your certification.
Gotcha. So when you say in process of graduating, is that like a year before graduating or can like a first year?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly the details, but if I remember vaguely, I think you need to be in your last year or in your senior year.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And you said, might want to book it out 3 months in advance. Do you think it takes 3 months to prepare for it? Or could you like get it done like?
Yeah.
Really?
Hell yeah. Well, it also depends on where it depends whether if you're fresh out of university or if you've been 10 years out of university.
Okay.
Right? If you're fresh out of a kin degree, then I think you're in a better position to take it sooner.
Is there a lot of overlapping content?
Yeah,
I'd say so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there is. But there's also a lot of content that you will never remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
If you were to give advice to someone prepping for the certification, how long would you recommend to prepare for it?
Man, if I'm gonna be honest, like I didn't read the textbook. I bought the textbook and I didn't read one page.
Really?
But
You must have come in
what I did
pretty fresh.
No, I was like a year and a half out of university, right? And that's quite a long time, right? Like I dumped everything from what I learned at UBC, right?
Are you actually just really smart?
No, hell no, hell no. But I downloaded every single app I could find on the CSCS for free questions. So I downloaded probably at least 12 different apps. And then what I did was a lot of them you have to pay for, or a lot of them would give you maybe like 10 questions and then they would say you have to pay for it. So then I would find the apps that gave me the most bang for my buck, like the most questions. And so I would just study thousands of practice questions and I would keep doing until I pretty much had it memorized. And whatever question that I didn't get right, I would Google that subject area and,
You wouldn't go to your textbook.
Nah, man. Nah, that's too much. I got to go to the table of contents. I got to flip through the pages. Why, you got Google and you just type in, what's this, right? And then there were some things that were specific to the textbook that I had to, like certain NSCA guidelines that I had to memorize. So yeah, I used the textbook for that. But honestly,
very interesting.
It's not necessary to buy a textbook,
But in terms of preparation time to prepare for it, let's say you're just finishing up university.
Yeah.
In Kin.
2 weeks to a couple months, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how much does it cost, if you remember?
I think it was like $500, $600 or something like that for the exam.
Okay. Yeah. And what can you do with the certification?
So if you're looking for a professional S&C coach position, with a school, with a professional team as such, maybe some gyms, CSCS is likely a minimum requirement, right? So it's more for a screening process, right? But other than that, it doesn't really do much else.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's just a credential, really, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know we were talking about this before this podcast, but what's the difference between the CSCS and getting your certified personal trainer, your CPT?
Right. With the CPT, you don't need a degree. Okay. It's not as recognized. Okay. Right. So CPT stands for Certified Personal Trainer. Yeah. Right. It might not be as credible as a CSCS if you're looking to be a strength and conditioning coach. Gotcha. If that makes sense, right? You have your personal trainers, you have your strength coaches, but really they're the same thing, right? They're just the titles. But if you're looking for a higher level strength position, then that CSCS is probably a minimum requirement.
Gotcha. Yeah. And I know you also became certified through the ACSM as a personal trainer. Right. So why did you do that in the first place? Right. You already had your CSCS.
Yep. I did that prior to the CSCS, right? So I did that while I was finishing up my degree. Okay. Right. So I don't think I was eligible to do the CSCS yet.
Okay. But you could have done the ACSM personal training.
Yeah, exactly. And so the reason I did that was to work as a personal trainer. Gotcha. Yeah. And one of my buddies said he took that and he recommended it. And I was like, okay, sure. Again, did the same thing as my CSCS, download a bunch of apps, did practice questions, and
Gotcha. And how much did that one cost?
I think that was significantly less, $200.
And would you say the preparation time for that one was also a little bit less?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. So once again, same thing, just kind of look online, potentially get a textbook or not. Yeah. Study for it, get the certificate, or write the exam, and then get your certification.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And how long are these certifications valid for?
Couple years.
Okay, so you just have to recertify?
You have to, with the CSCS, the unique thing about that certification is that you need continuing education units.
Oh, okay.
CEUs, meaning if you want to recertify, you can't just pay a fee. You actually need to attend seminars and such and submit those, right? So that's a really cool thing about the CSCS. It kind of keeps you accountable that way to stay on top of your field. Gotcha. Whereas with the CPT, I don't think it's as stringent. I think you just pay a recertification fee.
Gotcha. Yeah. And would you recommend this to undergrads listening to this?
Recommend the
ACSM personal trainer.
Man, I recommend there's so many certifications out there, so many, and I recommend whatever certification that will get you the job.
What do you think would be?
Yeah, there are a few that might be a little more credible than others. ACSM being one of them, NSCA being another, but there's also CanFit Pro, InfoFit, BCRPA. Right. So there are some gyms that might look at BCRPA more because that's more provincial based, right? So if you're applying for like a local community recreation center gym, they might like BCRPA more so than ACSM.
Gotcha.
But at the end of the day, certification is a certification. Right. Like it means very little.
It kind of matters more what you've done.
Exactly, your experience. You know what I mean? Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Asked for this specific podcast was, which is better, the ACSM or the ACE certification? If you know what the ACE.
I know AC. What I think is better.
Yeah. Or does it, once again, doesn't really matter. It kind of depends on what you do.
Yeah, man. I don't want to say one is better than the other.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't think either is better than the other, right? Again, going back to what I said earlier, whatever certification that's on the job description, right, that will help you get that job, that position, or whatever's cheaper, honestly. Whatever's honestly, yeah.
Gotcha. And Matt, I also know you're certified in functional range conditioning and mobility, or just mobility?
Mobility specialist. Gotcha. That's the name of the whole thing.
So how did you even learn to know that certification, and what is it?
So I came across that a few summers ago when I believe a friend of mine also happened to be in UBC Canada, and he told me about it. And I just read the title and I was like, this sounds pretty cool. Because at the time, mobility, like my whole mindset was like, laying down on a foam roller, stretching. And because that was like a big part to help me, perform well in powerlifting. So I was looking for something to help me do better in powerlifting and something that also helped with injury prevention. Yeah. And so I took that course kind of not knowing what it really was about, but 2 weeks prior to the course, they released all their lecture videos online. So I had a nice, good understanding of what they were going to talk about. And so basically their whole philosophy entails around joint strengthening, understanding like the difference between like what they call passive stretching versus active stretching, understanding what that is, or how to expand ranges of motion, how that can limit someone. But I'd say that was probably a really, really good course. It's definitely influenced my philosophy of training heavily, even to this day. And especially when I'm working as a kinesiologist with people who are injured, I utilize a lot of their principles with them.
And when you say it kind of changes your approach, what do you mean by that?
So I'd say like back then, like me training as a meathead would be do a couple dynamic stretching, just get my heart rate going, and then just foam roll to feel good, and then jump in a squat rack, go into it. But nowadays I'm utilizing more of their approaches, so adding like 10 minutes before or 10 minutes at the end, dedicated to mobility to improve my ranges of motion, to kind of talk about what the difference between like passive stretching or like active stretching is. So passive stretching is essentially you're kind of like holding a position or you're using a tool to make you feel great. And then you kind of temporarily gain that range of motion or you feel really good, but that only lasts for a certain amount of time. And then you kind of go back to where you were before. Whereas when you're actually doing active work, you're kind of honing that new range of motion, and you can expand that range of motion and pretty much prolong your range of motion. And why that's important, so if I kind of talk about like people with back pain, a lot of times you can look at like someone's hip and realize, that hip doesn't move properly. And if you can open up that hip a little more, help them move a little better, then they're likely to have decreased low back pain. Not saying that's the way to fix low back pain. That's just one aspect and one element.
Gotcha. Yeah. So very clear that you've used it in your career. But in terms of just getting the certification is a very standard of just looking it up online, trying to find an exam date.
So for the FRC, it's a little different from the CSCS. Okay. So I believe it's around $1,000 US, and you just basically sign up for the course, and then 2 weeks prior to the certification date, you get released all the lecture videos. Gotcha. And then on the day of it, so it's typically a 2-day seminar. So you would attend the seminar, their instructors would lecture you on their whole system and what it's about. And then at the end of it, you would write an exam. It's more or less like a pass or fail, like if you understood what you actually attended, and then you get your certification.
Overall, would you recommend it to someone that wants to be an S&C coach?
I would recommend it.
If you have the money.
If you have the money.
If I may add something to the personal training certifications, that I think is really important to point out. Personal training certification should not, in my opinion, qualify you to be a personal trainer. just a certification itself, right? I know some people with 0 certifications, okay? But they are some of the best coaches I've worked with, right? So what I'm trying to say is, the more fancier certifications, acronyms you have after your name does not equate to a more qualified personal trainer, right? So that's why when people ask me, what certification should I get for this and that? Yeah. I'm like, man, what I would actually recommend is using that money and go shadow under someone instead, right? I think that would probably be of much greater value for your time and money, right?
I think that's very true in a lot of other fields. I know,
100%.
Coming from the business, side of things, you can get tons of certifications online nowadays. Yeah. Some, even from like Google and Facebook, their own professional certifications, they look really great. Yeah. But when you go into an interview and you're getting, in some cases, like stress interview, you're drilled on some of these certifications. A lot of people don't know how to answer the questions because even though they have the certifications, they actually haven't used it in any which way.
Exactly.
So very interesting to hear that for personal training certifications as well.
Even with the CSCS too, right? That doesn't qualify you to be a strength and conditioning specialist.
Gotcha.
Right?
It's just something that job requirement or not requirement. They just kind of have listed as a recommended or we're looking for this.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I actually thought you had to have one of those to actually personal train anyone in BC.
Well, yeah, you should have a certification, right? And you're going to need insurance. Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is you should have more than that.
Gotcha.
You should have, experience, expertise, or shadowing or interning, volunteering somewhere.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If I may also add, like I totally agree with what Clarence was saying. Like certification isn't like something that should make you like the personal trainer. It's actually funny because a few weeks back I had people reaching out to me asking for their friend because they wanted to get into personal training, and so I connected with them and he was asking me these questions about like, oh, which certification is the best, comparing this and this and this. And to be honest, I didn't know like half of the ones he mentioned, and I just straight up told him like, at the end of the day, just choose the one that covers your grounds, like covers your insurance and is affordable. That's a big thing. And then the most important thing is getting experience. So I told him go shadow, reach out to jobs and ask if he can just intern. And it's kind of funny. This kind of goes back to Richmond Oval because I spent a few weeks or a couple months actually there shadowing and interning. Actually, Clarence got me into the doors to meet with Matt Fisher. And when I first met, I was like, this guy is so cool. I'm like, I want to be here. Yeah. So that's kind of how I got more involved with SNC and understanding what that role entails. It was a very different experience at Richmond Oval compared to UBC because at the Oval, I was more so understanding like, why were they doing this? What are they doing this for? And understanding like, how do you actually convey yourself as a coach? So that's a lot of things.
Now onto your current positions. Matt, how did you become a kinesiologist and an S&C coach at Innovative Fitness? Was it like someone that you knew that you kind of networked in, or did you just kind of like cold apply? Like, why Innovative Fitness?
I was working at Jump at the time, and I was there for 4 years, and I kind of had this urge to try something different. I felt like I wanted to work with a different population. And so I actually reached out to Clarence because at the time he was still at Better Bodies, and I was asking him like, what's the path to going into personal training and this whole new realm? And his mentor used to work at Innovative Fitness. And so he connected me with him, and then that's how I got my footstep into the doors of Innovative Fitness.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. So very clearly that the personal training realm, the network is very big.
For sure.
Not only just getting clients, but also seems like getting positions too, and helping other people get positions.
100%. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how I got in the Oval. That's how I got a Saltis.
Gotcha.
Right? Yeah.
For sure. I'm just working there at IF. What do you like and dislike about both the kin aspect and the S&C aspect?
I'd say what I like a lot about kin is working with like the more injured population, and in a way it gives me kind of like the glimpse of being like a therapist, like a physical therapist. So that's what I really enjoy about it, and the rehabilitation side, being able to kind of just explain a lot more about their body and educating the client about why they're injured or how to fix it or how to make it better. In terms of S&C, what I really enjoy is just really just having fun, like getting people explosive or getting people athletic, or if it's with general population, is how to get them better at their daily activities, how to get them more pain-free.
And Clarence, how did you become an S&C coach at Saltus? All of it through some sort of did you just go in there with your resume cover letter? Like, well,
this time the owner reached out to me.
Oh, the flip script this time. Very interesting.
So yeah, and that's because again the S&C world in Vancouver is pretty. You're gonna know someone that's gonna know someone, right? So we all kind of follow each other on social media, and so Sean is the owner of Saltus. He reached out to me and he asked if I wanted to be a part of Saltus. We met up and it looked like they're doing some really cool stuff there, and really great coaches there. So I saw it as an opportunity to learn and grow. Right. And it's been great.
And right now, after having been in the field for some time, what do you think is the thing that you like the most about being an S&C coach?
There's a moment, the moment when you're working with a team, right, during a training session, right, and when everyone is completely focused and dialed in, right, and you're all working towards the same goal. It's a very cool and special feeling, right? Everyone's in this, the zone, right? Everyone's dialed in, focused, and we understand that you're part of something greater than yourself. You're part of something greater than the sum of its parts, right? So, and that's what I love about S&C. Right, is that feeling.
That's amazing. Yeah. And what are some things that you do or have done as an S&C coach that, even for those listening that are considering it as a career, what are some things that you do that you might not necessarily see in a job position?
Mm-hmm. Man, emails, programming, all the behind the scenes kind of work. Yeah, all that admin type of work, continuing education. Lots of hours spent. Lots of hours spent doing all that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And what can you say about your experience as the regional S&C coach for the Canadian wheelchair rugby team?
It's been absolutely humbling and rewarding so far.
How did you even get?
Through the Oval, kind of worked my way up, and then I was eventually offered that role with the previous coach before me left.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it's been so awesome working with those athletes.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, what's been your favorite part about it so far?
I had no idea about wheelchair rugby. Right, I didn't know anything about the sport. I didn't know anything about para athletes. Yeah. Right, so it just really opened an entire new world to me. Right, and I have to say, I always tell my athletes, I'm learning more from them than they are learning more from me. Yeah. Like straight up, and I feel that I'm a better person, I'm a better coach because of them. So yeah, it's been really cool working with them.
That's amazing. Yeah. If you had any tips for current undergrads or even new grads wanting to go into the S&C field and that might want to consider starting up their own business one day, do you have any tips or advice?
Yeah, man, surround yourself with good people. And when I say good people, not a group of like a cheerleading squad who's going to praise you and agree with everything that you do, but around people that are not afraid to challenge you, that are not afraid to give you a different perspective, right? So for instance, when I first started in the S&C field, I was looking out for the best coaches, right? For the best S&C coaches to learn from. But I realize now that, man, I can learn something from anyone, right? And when I learn something from, say someone in business, that's going to help me also become a better S&C coach as well. They're going to bring to the table a different perspective than compare if I were just solely looking out for professional S&C coaches to learn from. So I think overall, your environment is huge, right? So if you want to become successful and have an edge, right, over your competition or whatnot, surround yourself with good people, right? From a wide variety of backgrounds. I think that's key too.
Right. Yeah, really helps you understand that perspective.
100%, man. And don't get too comfortable, right? Yeah. I think especially after your first few years out of university. Yeah, don't get too comfortable, right? And I think I've seen it, right? And people they get into a routine, right? Not to say that anything is wrong with that, but for me personally, anyways, I like the idea of constantly trying to learn and grow, and so I'm always looking for different opportunities and not afraid to get out of that comfort zone.
Great.
Yeah,
I totally agree with what Clarence was saying. Like your environment's super important. I know there's that quote where you are the sum of the 5 person you hang out with most. Yeah. I mean, currently, obviously, Clarence is one of them right now. But even before we jumped on to Orion together, he was more than just a friend to me. He was like a mentor to me, always there to help. And that's something that I've really appreciated. And like you said, you know, you want to be around people who challenge you. And that's one thing that's been really grateful, that I'm very grateful for, as someone who's always challenging me, calling me out when there's things that need to be called out for. So that's been like super helpful with my growing process as an individual. I think it's easy to get comfortable, especially graduating. You can find a job, you can be, you know, develop your routine and stay with there for however many years you decide. And not that that's an issue or anything, but I personally want to challenge myself. And so that's kind of like one of the biggest reasons why I got into Orion, is because I wanted to try something a little different. That was the same reason why I left my jump gymnastics job, is because I wanted to try something different, working with a different population.
And it really, you know, speaks to something that when you get to work on something that you care about, that you're passionate about, that is really when, and even speaking on in terms of, you know, something like this for Van City, when you have passion behind what you're doing, work doesn't seem so much as work.
100%.
And as to what you said earlier, it's not really, you know, not really working for anyone. You're really working for you. And especially when your value and your goals mean so much more than just you. And you're working towards something that helps others, something greater than yourself.
100%.
That is something that is.
Spot on. Yeah, if I may add one thing to your previous question or your last question about the tips for students looking for S&C opportunities, get into find an internship or volunteer early on, right? I think that's going to be huge, right? And that's how you're going to develop those connections early on and get your foot in the door, right? You got to work for free, essentially, for the first bit. You're going to have to, climb that ladder, work for free first. Yeah.
I was going to say, like, kind of building off what you were saying, like, I think we can all kind of agree that we're in the business of helping people, and, you know, doing the podcast, doing Orion, doing S&C. This is just our outlet of helping people.
For sure. Yeah. Great. Well, other than that, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Yeah, can't wait to see where Orion RLT gets to in the future.
Hey, thanks for having us. That was a pleasure.